Are live. How's it going, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we're back at it with our latest edition of Big Mets Updates. This time, a live edition here, because we haven't been live on the platform in north of a week, and I gotta be back here talking it all Mets with each and every one of you amazing Mets fans. I apologize for the delay on the live stream front, and I would also like to preface heading into this, folks, that if I am a little not as fast talker as I typically am, if, say, I take a minute to pause before getting into a certain part of a segment, or if I feel like I need to catch my breath, it does just go in hand with the fact that I had surgery less than a week ago now, back last Wednesday on a hernia. So if I'm looking a little uncomfortable at times, please know that that's the reason why, as I'm still rehabbing, getting back there from surgery. I'm fine to do this, but I haven't done a live stream since the procedure happened. So just fair warning, anybody, if you're wondering why does Wardy maybe seem a little bit off tonight, it's nothing personal or anything like that. It's just what I got going on. But again, stuff that I have to deal with every single day, and I don't have a problem with it because I've been dying to talk to all you Mets fans for a hot minute now. Not only with the latest updates that we've been doing on the channel, our pre-recorded segments, but I've been wanting to chop it up with each and every one of you guys, and we have a big discussion get into, presented by BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook. A bit on them later, folks, but in today's show, we're going to get into the latest with the Mets having finalists for not only the managerial position, but yes, NL MVP. We're going to get into the talks on Lindor and Mendy here shortly. From there, we're also going to touch on the latest in Mets land having to do with, yes, their key hire from the New York Yankees organization. Was there to know about the Mets' new assistant pitching coach? Why is this pitching guru such a massive hire from the Mets and such a loss for the Yankees? From there, we're going to talk a bit about the Juan Soto pursuit and how Steve Cohen may just have an advantage beyond the simple dollars that we all know to this point. From there, to really wrap things up, we're going to get into the other current free agent targets and trade targets. Garrett Crochet, the current connection there. Willy Adames, Corbin Burnes, everyone your mother, we're going to touch on. We're going to answer as many of your comments, questions, concerns here in the live show as we always do here on the platform. So thank you guys so much for taking the time tonight. I really appreciate it. Really does mean a lot to me, everybody. And now let's get into everything on this front. I got Andre, Swan, great member, how you doing? Brandon, great member, how you doing? Going up the list here. Jeff, Rocco, BC, Paul, going up the list. Marco, Mr. Met, John, great member. How you doing? A different John. John Cape, that is. Scott A, that one kid. Robert, Mike Bartholomew, hope you're doing fantastic. Enrique, hope you are doing awesome. G Money, everybody going up and down the list. Thank you so much again for taking the time, folks. I really do appreciate it. Let's see. I hope so. I hope that's the case too, David. I really do. Ray Neal, how you doing? Thank you guys for taking the time tonight. All right, guys. Let's start off with the fun discussion here because we just found this out over the past hour. Leading up into tonight's show, folks, as you make sure to smash a like and subscribe and let me know in the comments what are your thoughts on the current Mets free agent and trade targets that we know at this point. We're going to touch on more this week, including a big video dropping tomorrow, so be on the lookout for it. But I definitely want to know where you guys, or how you guys are feeling rather, when Mets internal and external free agent / trade targets. Let's hear it, especially if you have specific comments, questions for me that I can answer at some point and more towards the end of the live show, preferably, but at any point I'd greatly love to do that, folks. But let's start off with a bang here, because as we mentioned over the past hour, we have found out that yes, Carlos Mendoza Mendy is officially an NL Manager of the Year finalist. He will be paired there with Pat Murphy, and we also see Mike Shelt from San Diego as the three-headed monster of a finalist here in the NL. Obviously, I hope and pray that Mendy comes out victorious in the end, because I firmly believe that he's beyond deserving for a first-time manager. First-time manager in a big market like this is no easy task. Yes, he had a lot of talent on the roster, but he also need to keep the right charismatic attitude when the Mets were 11 games below 500 to get where they ultimately were, 2 games shy of a World Series berth. Not too shabby for a first-time manager there. Nothing against Pat Murphy or Shelton in the slightest, but even with the great run the Padres had, and certainly a very impressive one that defied a lot of the odds, including myself heading into the season with the Milwaukee Brewers and Pat Murphy, 2 guys in himself there, and Carlos Mendoza, who did things that Craig Counsell simply couldn't do in his first year as manager with the Chicago Cubs. No less, I'm so happy to see Mendy getting his flowers, and even if he doesn't win this one in the end, I really do believe that this is a start of many years where we're going to see Mendoza as one of the better managers that you see consistently year in and year out coming out of the National League. Let me know how you guys feel about Mendoza, if you feel he was deserving of being a finalist here or not in the live chat, and my replay viewers in the comments down below. Thank you so much for doing that. Let's see. Was it Moraine Metz? I could be butchering that name, but M. Metz says, Wardy, can you make a t-shirt saying hernia free? No, I won't, but that's hilarious. Let's see here. Alonso has to go. I don't necessarily agree there, my friend, but we're always going to talk about Alonso, especially up until he makes his inevitable decision this offseason. Brooklyn Knights, I appreciate that a lot, my friend. Thank you so much for chiming in. Wardy, do I have any Soto concerns in terms of his fielding, or no? Not at all, because I know what to expect with Soto's fielding. You're going to have a strong arm, but you're not going to have a superior defender. You're not signing him to be a superior defender. You're signing him for basically being one of the best, if not the best hitter in Major League Baseball currently for the next 10 to 15 years. That's why you signed Juan Soto, simply put. But we'll expand more on Soto here in tonight's discussion, how we're going to get into where the Mets are currently at from what we know reportedly in their sweepstakes, paired with how Steve Cohen potentially has a slight advantage, if not a fairly solid advantage at the end of the day in negotiations with one Scott Boras. If you guys haven't checked out that fantastic article on Tim Healy, we're going to break that down a little bit more here a little bit in the show. Gotta put a baseball logo on the hat I buy. Oh, for sure. Yes. Once we get the Wardy logo on, I would love to see that roll out of merch for you guys, should you guys have interest. I think we will definitely have enough. I've had a lot of people ask me over the past couple years to get merch going, and we just haven't at this point. We've gotten really I mean, that's not true. We actually did do merch for a short period of time when I was with the previous network, but one that, when I ended my tenure with that network, so did the merch that came along with it. So we'll definitely have to get that rolling, because I know you guys would be rocking, and I would love to see you guys and Wardy logo, Wardy related merch, especially with some of my sayings or just some stuff that we commonly say in the chat, whatever it might be. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Let's see. Wondering why I'm blocked on the WardyNYM page. I interacted with you on your other page and haven't been a toxic contributor on there. Scott, I have no clue, my man, but I thank you so much for enlightening and letting me know on that. Oh, Scott, you know why I think that's the case, Scott? Because I did not run that page from the beginning. So you might have had a negative interaction with the previous page owner there prior to when I was running it. So that might have been the reason, my friend, because that wasn't something that I did to my knowledge, because I know you and I've known you in the chat for a while now. Let's see. Do where I design clothes, I will make design. David West, hit me up on Twitter or hit me up on my email. Let's make it happen, brother. Would love to make that happen. Seriously, David West. Hit me up on my email, which is in the description of the live show, and we can go from there, or try to hit me up in DM via socials. Okay, guys, schmucks, absolutely. All right, guys, let's continue to talk about it. I think we're all in the same unison. We're very happy to see Carlos Mendoza now as a finalist for the NL Manager of the Year. And you want to know what I'm equally excited about, if not even happier about? It's what we all expected and are very happy to see it come to fruition. It's official. Francisco Lindor has been named a NL MVP finalist. Frankie, as we know, had himself a monstrous year for the Mets, one that defied the odds of many. Listen, we all had high hopes and expectations for Lindor heading into the season, but if you would have told me that he would single-handedly carry this Mets team on his back the way he did from as soon as he slotted there into leadoff right around mid to late May, I would have said, you know what? I'm not going to have a bridge to sell you, but we need to see it to believe it. And Lindor showed it, because when everything was down, when there felt like there was no leadership, when it felt like that there was no true guidance in this clubhouse with the on-field product, Jorge Lopez throwing the glove over the netting, that felt so down in Mets land. And to see Lindor kind of helps single-handedly rise above and beyond for this entire Mets team is exactly why this man is, in my opinion, deserving of winning NL MVP. Obviously, it's going to go to Shohei Ohtani based on everything he did this year. 50-50, winning the dance certainly doesn't hurt his odds, especially with like a cooked shoulder the past couple of games where, you know, he literally was cooked there. All respect in the world of Shohei Ohtani, but Lindor was so valuable in ways to the Mets that I feel like still trump what Ohtani's value was to the Dodgers, especially during Lindor's time of health. If Lindor never went down with injury, I firmly believe he would have continued to lead the way for the remainder of the regular season and National League wins above replacement, because he was leading the way all summer long between the two, which was so impressive to see. But Lindor's very unfortunate injury that we saw there was his demise from ultimately winning this award, or having a very strong possibility of it happening. No less, Francisco Lindor, thank you so much for everything that you did for this Mets team in 2024. You have not only continued to really not only blossom, but just exaggerate to the highest magnitude of my love and fandom for yourself, but you have done this to the masses now. Again, if you are a Francisco Lindor denier and being a fantastic player at this point, then you are just so far out of the realm of possibility, and you are so far into delusion that there is no saving you at this point, because any baseball fan with common sense knows that Lindor is not only the captain of this organization now, without question, but is also one of the best in the absolute game, and he proved that yet again in a massive do-or-die season for the Mets in various ways in their first years with Mendoza and Stearns trying to properly transition into something great, and they did that, and then some, and then some, and then some here in 2024. Oh, we're going full glaze. We have to. Francisco Lindor deserves it all. This man broke his back for us, literally. That's what he did. He was literally carrying us so long, he's like, all right, I need a little bit of a break, and that's a lot coming from him, Mr. I need to play every day, Mr. Iron Man, but we love him no less. What a year it was for him. So the Mets hired the love guru, not the love guru, they hired a pitching guru that we're about to get into. That I'm really excited to get into the discussion on this pitching guru that the Mets made, that we'll get into in 1 second, everybody. Would I rather have Pete or Soto Wardy? It's not a hard question. I've said this many times, it's nothing personal against Pete Alonso at all. I love him to death. But I would happily fly Pete or drive Pete to his next destination if it meant he wouldn't be a Met, knowing that Soto would be coming here. Again, nothing personal against Alonso at all, but comparing the two is apples and oranges. They're not the same. They're not even in the same stratosphere. One is this generation's, you could say Bonds, you could say Ted Williams, you could go down the list of whatever top hitter you can imagine in your brain. Soto's right in that discussion at the young age of 26 versus Polar Bear Pete Alonso, who's done a lot of great things in the Mets organization, especially on the slugging front. We greatly appreciate all that. However, he's still not in the same class of overall generational type hitter the way that Juan Soto certainly is. Nothing personal at all against Pete. I love him and I hope he comes back, but these are not the same, so we should not compare them as such. I think most fans rationally that understand just how good Juan Soto is can seem to understand that as well. I tend to agree, Poppy. I do. The combination of Lindor and Soto in the postseason would be the best duo baseball has had since Ortiz and Ramirez. And mind you, this is with us loving Alonso and everything he did for this Mets team this past run. 3 consecutive games with an opposite field home run, including saving the Mets season there in Milwaukee in a do-or-die wild card Game 3 matchup against the Brewers. Then we fast forward there with a massive dead center home run, give the Mets a huge early lead off Jack Flaherty and the Dodgers in Game 5 of the NLDS. We will always cherish those moments, and I hope that they're the start of many when it comes to Alonso slugging big time in Queens. I will never take Alonso over Soto as things currently stand. Hey, Wardy, do I think we can get Burnes and trade for Crochet if we get Soto? I don't think all those things would be to happen. I don't foresee the Mets signing Corbin Burnes big time and then trading all it's going to take for Crochet. Is it impossible? No. But I'd be surprised. I think if the Mets were to trade for Crochet, they would be also more inclined to be going for the lesser guys. We're looking more in the Walker Buehlers, the Sean Manayas, the Luis Severino classes still versus Burnes, knowing that Corbin's going to be looking for an absolute bag on a long-term deal. And I think David Stearns, as much as he has a good rapport with Burnes and likes him, I think the Mets will also be smart and not overextend for a starter already at the age of 30. I could be wrong there, but David Stearns doesn't strike me as one to do that, knowing that we were 2 games shy of a World Series last year when we were, by all means, not dependent on a long-term starting pitcher type contract like that. I have confidence in this Mets pitching staff, and I have even more confidence now. David, I will definitely check it out, my man. Thank you so much for that. But this is the final thing I got to say, folks. When we talk about confidence in the Mets pitching and their ability to turn out pitching each and every year, now with the pitching staff that they have built beautifully there with their analytics group, that's from the top bottom all the way from Port St. Lucie up to Germany Hefner now at the major league level. So let's now properly transition into really a big discussion today, and that has to do with the Mets' huge pitching hire. But one final thing before we get there, everybody, and that is shouting out our amazing sponsor at BetUS. BetUS has you covered with all your sports betting needs, folks. Make sure you head over to betus.com.pa today if you guys want to get in on the action, because we have Juan Soto betting sweepstakes. Yes, you heard that correctly, folks. The Mets are currently the money line underdog. They have the second best odds across 5 teams at least of trying to acquire Juan Soto's services this offseason. The Yankees are still deemed as the favorite at minus 200, which I think is honestly a waste of money to anyone that's going to invest there. But the Mets at plus 150, and then the Dodgers jump to plus 600. If you want to, again, take your gamble and see the MLB entire world end next year because you have Soto going to the Dodgers, then by all means put $5 on that plus 600. But I'm already hammering Mets plus 150. I'm putting 100 down on Juan Soto to be a New York Metropolitan by this offseason's end. And because I'm doing that, I'm also going to be coming out with a potential turnout of 250. So again, if the Mets get Juan Soto this offseason, my $100 bet is going to turn into a $250 win. So this is a double win if you're a Mets fan. If you guys feel that confident that Juan Soto will be a Met, that Steve Cohen will not be outbid, and you want to put your money where your mouth is because you think it's free money, head over to betus.com.pa today and get in on the Juan Soto next team sweepstakes today, just the way that I did. I'm going to be doing this a lot this offseason with the Soto sweepstakes up until we find out for certain where he's going to be going. My apologies, everybody. All right, now let's get into the big news. The big news. The Mets have hired, drumroll please, Desi. I'm going to potentially butcher the last name, maybe not. Druschel, or it's Druschel. It's Druschel. It's one of the two, I believe. Druschel or Druschel as their assistant pitching coach per Andy Martino. Desi was with the Yankees since the start of the 2022 season, and this is a massive, and I mean massive hire for the New York Mets. We're going to get into in a second here everything that you guys need to know on Desi, and these come from some great notes from our pitching contributor on the platform, Isaac Rothman. Isaac, who is, again, a young little pitching guru in his own right. He's going to be doing great things at the MLB level before you guys know it. And no, that's not an exaggeration on my front at all. That's inevitably going to be happening sooner rather than later at this rate. He's such a smart mind, but he has some great news to share here on this new Mets hire. Before I get to that, I do see Yoshima. Thank you so much. Early baseball offseason is better than Giants football. At least they're still the Knicks. But of course, and our Knicks need to be better too. They're 4-5 right now. Like, what are we doing here? No defense, no bench. That's a problem. I'll be covering the Knicks on Knicks Media YouTube channel for post-game coverage this Wednesday, so be on the lookout for that in their game against the Bulls, I believe. But guys, why is this a big hire for the Mets? Well, one, the Mets got a guy that was under contract with the New York Yankees. The Yankees just lost the World Series this year. So let's just talk about this for a second. One, I'm going to tell you so fast as to why you shouldn't be clown-facing an assistant pitching coach. He is one of the masterminds behind why the Yankees have had continued great success on the pitching front and on the analytical front the past couple years. There's so much more to this. And it's not only the current connection with Carlos Mendoza, which helped this hire happen. Obviously, both of them having pre-existing work experience with each other there during their time in the Bronx. But the Mets pride this man away, similarly to how they pride Eric Chavez away when Chavez was an active hire for the Yankees for like a second. Then he came over for the Mets in a slightly increased role there on the hitting coach front, which I know that some of you guys love and some of you guys don't love now in hindsight. Now, as we fast forward with Desi here, this is what a lot of people in the industry have to say on him, especially on the pitching front, and a fantastic breakdown that I'm about to share with you all from my man Isaac here on the platform. Listen up, folks. New Mets assistant pitching coach Desi is a legend in the player development and pitching development world. His relationships with Mets through not only Carlos Mendoza with the Yankees, Mets director of pitching development Eric Yeagers played and worked under him at the University of Iowa. He's also known for his work with seam orientation, which in simple terms has to do with pitch design, fixing pitchers' arsenals and making pitches better. Notably, he likely played a big role in Luke Weaver, who went from a starter to a dominant reliever, then even closer at times for the Yankees this past season. And he also has been known for historically being interested in pitchers with big horizontal movement. So we're talking about guys with nasty horizontal break, which David Stearns has done a great job on trying to acquire, and especially lower move bullpen pickups the past year since he's arrived in Queens as our Pobo on their sinkers and sliders, which again, you think of someone right away, sinker, slider, splitty, all that type of orientation. Reed Garrett right away, and plenty others that the Mets have in the bag for 2025, and well for that matter. And just like that, this is a man that specifies in these specific pitches on horizontal movement and getting the best out of their pitch shape. So another young, analytically minded individual that's coming into play working alongside Germany and Hefner here. And yes, they still have Blake. That's fine. But here's the thing. The Mets just pried away Blake's right-hand man. So that's what's so beautiful about this hire for the Mets. Germany Hefner, who made a lot of proper in-season strides, where there was some early criticism with Germany Hefner for sure. I think we could all agree there with how the first half of the season went. First quarter of the season, rather, up until the end of May, where the Mets had nothing. I mean, nothing going on the pitching from the bullpen. Went from looking great to then looking terrible. And the rotation, you were getting no length out of. Luis Severino was solid. Sean Manaea was still trying to provide any sort of length for you whatsoever. And now you fast forward to seeing the great strides that Manaea made with his arm slot angle, changing that up. Chris Sale last throughout the regular season. Severino continuing to stay healthy and provide length. Jose Quintana making proper in-season adjustments with his arsenal to give us some very quality outings all the way into postseason play. David Pearson becoming absolutely masterful for the Mets down the stretch after he made his season debut there in June, so on and so forth. The Mets had a lot of massive things happen on the pitching front for the better. With everything that they were dealt with, all the adversities that they had this season, they overcame so much of it, and that was in great hands with Germany and Hefner's work. Now you're going to be adding Desi as his right-hand man, as his assistant coach, because mind you, Desi is not changing roles. He's not going to a higher role with the Mets. He left the Yankees. He was not fired. He left the Yankees to join the Mets in the same exact role. And that is not a testament to how much Steve Cohen has changed the culture here in a short period of time, how much these crosstown hires have also benefited the Mets, like Carlos Mendoza and everyone else in company. David Stearns, how brilliant of a young mind he is to really help sway not only fellow people in front offices, coaching staffs like we saw there in Desi, but players as well to want to be here. Again, these are all just further reasons to be excited about the Mets' future, because they went from being far from desirable, where anyone in the Yankees organization would do everything imaginable but come to this Mets team. Now they're willingly deciding to do exactly that, even while they're not moving up in said organization. This is a lateral move. This is not an upgrade the way that it was for Chavez slightly, where I believe Chavez went from being, instead of assistant hitting coach, just a hitting coach when he came to the Mets. He would have initially been assistant with the Yankees. Correct me if I'm wrong, everybody, from a couple years ago. This is a lateral move. That's why I'm all the more excited about it, because he wants to be here, and everyone that wants to be here makes this team that much better. You have an owner that has a willingness to spend, and unlike any other owner in Major League Baseball, based on his value and how much he's separated from the rest in North American sports for baseball specifically. Then you have a president of baseball operations that grew up in New York, a diehard Mets fan, that wants to be here and understands the ability to separate fandom from business and have a proper gel, unlike everything we've seen before from the front office for this New York Mets organization. Now you add in a coaching staff from Carlos Mendoza, first-year manager, a hungry manager that always was seeking the opportunity after getting said opportunities to a degree, with Aaron Boone being either ejected from games or beaten out because of health reasons, unfortunately, the past couple years for the Yankees. And now you add in Desi, another key aspect to a World Series ran New York Yanks in 2024. I think you have to be very happy about that if you're a Mets fan. And then you add in the potential prospect of, okay, the Mets can pry in one big former Yankee in Juan Soto this offseason. Everyone, including myself, will be very happy with that potential turnout. Michael, thank you so much for the membership. Michael Nealis has become a DeGoat member. Thank you so much for that, my man. Also, bear with me 1 second, everybody. I'm just going to adjust myself briefly. Post-surgery's barking just a little bit too much for me at the moment, so I got to adjust myself. I'm all for signing Soto, but you need his power. I agree. I'm not saying to sign Soto and then don't bring Alonso back. I think you need to do both of those things. Absolutely. I think it makes endless sense to try to make sure that that is a reality that's going to happen. Because, listen, it's not that it would be a lateral thing if you brought in Soto and lost Alonso. However, just think about how much more lethal this offense can be if you bring in Soto and still bring back Alonso. Then you're looking at Lindor, Soto, Alonso as your three-headed monster on the power front. And then, yeah, you have Mark Vientos. And then, yeah, you have Francisco Alvarez. And then, yeah, you have everyone else in company and all the great aspects of the lineup that they certainly bring on the offensive end. That's the best of both worlds. But if you have to go with one or the other, I will ask and defer this question to everyone watching live on a replay, like we've done in the past, and we'll continue to do exactly that. Between Juan Soto and Pete Alonso, who would you like to see in Queens next season? If you had to pick one, rapid fire it in the live chat, everybody, in the comments down below. For my replay viewers, go ahead and do the exact same thing. And thank you so much for doing exactly that. You guys are absolutely amazing. We're going to get to Willy Adames, AJ. Don't you worry. We're going to get to him shortly. Before we get to Willy Adames, though, I do have some more things I'd like to share on the front of Juan Soto, and this comes from a fantastic read that I highly recommend to each and every one of you. Tim Healy, who's always killing it. Great guy. I love one thing that I love so much about Tim, and he kind of separates himself from a couple others. Tim, Will Salmon alike and Pat Ragazzo. Those are my guys. They do such a great job on actually showing personality while also being on the beat for the Mets. I think they do a very good job at that. And Tim, you know, I've admired his work for a while there with Newsday, came out with a piece yesterday that I highly recommend for you all to check out. And when we talk about exactly this, let's get into the following, because it's labeled as so. Steve Cohen and Scott Boras, who spend time together at and away from the ballpark when the former is in LA, tend to get deals done quickly at a higher level than expected. More on the dynamic, important in the context of this offseason. Highly implore you guys to check out this article. I'm not going to explain everything. I'm not going to say word for word everything that's in this article because it does have a paywall. I know that for Tim, you know, out of respect for him, I'm not going to give you guys word for word everything that he said, but I'm going to simplify here on what the whole gist of this article is. And really, it's about showing the separation that Steve Cohen has as an owner in his relationship with the most important agent in baseball versus any other owner's current relationship with said agent and Scott Boras. Scott Boras was asked about his relationship between himself and Steve Cohen, and he kind of beat around it, obviously, and said how, you know, the type of owner he is the type of clients that we have, and our clients look for the type of thing that an owner such as his is desiring. Basically, there's a mutual connection there. We have top clients, and we have a top owner that's willing to spend, and they have a great rapport. And this connection, believe it or not, even with how the Carlos Correa sweepstakes fell through a couple years ago, hold more true than what you initially could believe, because they're pretty tight-knit, actually. According to Tim Healy, he referenced that both himself, that being a Scott Boras, and Steve Cohen, hang out quite a bit before, after games, and even out of game settings there when they're in town together and are able to meet up. So this is not one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, this is just, you know, a couple minutes and that's that. No, they're spending extensive time with each other, having thorough conversations on the front of business. And what we have known, going back to the Max Scherzer contract with the Mets, which is still the record-breaking contract for the Mets and highest AAV, average annual value, per year of a deal in Mets history. We also look at the Carlos Correa offer after the Brandon Nimmo extension, which happened in a snap of a finger. Why? Because as Brandon Nimmo said, you know, he's like, well, it's done. That's that. Like, as soon as he hit the market, but Steve made it abundantly clear he wanted him to stay. They were going to get it done. Boras didn't beat around the bush. They got it done as soon as they possibly could. Carlos Correa inks a $315 million deal long-term with the Mets, which ended up not happening, that we all know about. I asked Steve Cohen up front of his face his thoughts on the Correa sweepstakes, and then the next day we find out that Correa goes to Minnesota. So we did find our answer shortly after that one. If you guys remember that was a fever dream then. It still is now. But as we go back from those couple of years ago, that was such a quick transaction with Scott Boras and Steve Cohen. And it wasn't just about, okay, Scott Boras was trying to work all these owners silly. The Giants backed out, and with them in that limbo, they pounced right away before maybe the Giants could counteract yet again. Whatever the reasons may have been, this has been a relationship that has greatly built since its inception, at least going back to when Steve Cohen first became owner from the 2020-2021 season. So as we fast forward a couple years now, we look at the potential of not only landing Juan Soto, but any significant free agent that's currently tied with one Scott Boras, Pete Alonso notably as well. You know that this is not going to be too long-lasting of a negotiation. As long as the dollars are there, the relationship has already been there. This is not a Ponzian regime where there's pessimism and disgust and potential thought of working with one Scott Boras, the way that Scott Sterling's disgusted at the thought of working with some idiots that got absolutely schooled by Bernie Madoff like so many others, and then came the harsh reality that, wow, we probably shouldn't have known a team because we're going to penny pinch, not spend nearly enough that's going to take to be a big market club in New York year after year after year. This is not the same thing. This is a new regime. And Steve Cohen has made it known his easy willingness to go out and spend for guys that he wants. And the fact that Steve is flying this week, we'll probably find out that reportedly happened today or tomorrow in the next 24 to 48 hours in Cali with Scott Boras and Juan Soto's team, that being there, and Steve Cohen, David Stearns and company. When Steve puts his mind to something, usually there's great things that come out of it. And there's a perfect quote towards the end of this article that I'd like to share with you all from Tim Healy's piece. Again, I highly implore you all to check it out if you haven't already. It's a fantastic read. But the roundup is this. And don't forget what a Cohen colleague said in 2020 during the elongated process that resulted in this and his buying the team. And I quote, "What Stevie wants, Stevie gets. I'll do it my way," Cohen said. "I have a great relationship with Scott. I enjoyed the conversation." All positivity between Scott Boras and Steve Cohen heading into the biggest player sweepstakes, not named Shohei Ohtani, that we may see for the next number of years. Juan Soto is here, he is available, and the Mets are going to be heavily involved up until the very end. So my question each and every, here's the thing though, Juan, we didn't have a Shohei Ohtani signing to flex. Because bear in mind, if Shohei Ohtani wasn't signed by the Dodgers, Yamamoto is not nearly as a lock to go to the Dodgers. And I would probably say that Yamamoto goes to the Mets if Ohtani never landed with LA. Because if Ohtani landed with any other team, there wouldn't be that same bias. And the Mets had the best offer on the table, and I really think that they courted him well. I could be wrong of that, of course, but again, there's valid reasoning as to why Yamamoto didn't work last year, but it was never for a lack of effort on the Mets end. It was more so on a premeditated thought by Mr. Yamamoto after Ohtani was officially landing in LA that, he had to be there with his fellow countryman, good friend, fellow teammate from the WBC and previous Team Japan's, and they won it all in year one. I don't blame him whatsoever. Let's see. Are we talking about Sasaki tonight or no? Yes, we will definitely touch on Roki Sasaki as we have past a number of days. Similarly to Yamamoto, I think it's going to end in the same fashion. I do think that until proven otherwise, Sasaki will be a Dodger or to a lesser degree a San Diego Padre. I think he's going to land in the NL West, as much as I hope that isn't the case, just because there's so much reason for us to believe that right now. And on the case of Alonso too, which we will touch on a little bit more in the show here, I think when it comes to Alonso and his sweepstakes, his market isn't going to be obnoxious, but when it gets going, I think it's going to be really hot. I think we're going to see, 6 to 12 teams in on Alonso and actually trying to court him in ways beyond first base, DH especially, standalone DH if he's willing to not be stubborn of just being a first baseman. I think it's going to get very interesting with the Alonso sweepstakes, and this is the kind of what's the calm before the storm, if you will. We're waiting for more significance on the Alonso front to pick up because there's been nothing outside of teams showing preliminary interest, which we know there's going to be plenty of. Tengus, thank you for the donation. Tengus says, if no Alonso, could we trade for Vlad, sign Walker? Okay, so Vladimir Guerrero Jr. trade, I don't foresee to happen at all. And this has more so to do with the Toronto Blue Jays not being able to say to their fan base, hey, we're going into a rebuild after effing up our rebuild that we never properly finished. We had a great offense and didn't build around it enough after 2021, and it just fell flat from there. They love Vladdy. Vladdy loves Toronto. They're going to try to keep Vladdy long-term, and they have to. Because if they don't keep Vladdy long-term, you know what the perception that builds for that fan base and for that city and for players trying to go to Toronto where they know they have an uphill battle, that being the Blue Jays in itself, so much to begin with, to try to attract players there in Toronto. I don't foresee Vladdy to be traded whatsoever. Christian Walker, though, is absolutely a reality of a first base replacement if the Mets lose out on Alonso. But I don't foresee that to happen, only because I think Christian Walker, while he would be a fantastic short-term option if you do lose Alonso in the end, I think Walker is going to be getting a more lucrative, maybe, a longer contract than some would believe to a team that's in desperate need of that type of power implementation. When the Mets do know that they can still defer to Mark Vientos to shift to first base and see how that transitions. Because, history would say that going from third base to first base, your defense will simplify. And even though it won't be necessarily fantastic, I think Vientos at first base will not be the end of the world the way that at times, as moments throughout the year, it felt like it was for him at the hot quarter. Not overly, because his bat was really superseding all of his issues for the most part. But in the case of like Willy Adames, Alex Bregman, there are some other guys the Mets can defer to for the hot corner should they want to shift Mark there in the corner infield from third base to first base. How do you guys feel about that? Are you guys in favor of trying to pursue Christian Walker as a free agent replacement if you say lose out on one polar bear Pete Alonso this year? I actually didn't have intentions of discussing Christian Walker all that much in tonight's show, but given that we are having the discussion, we might as well chat it up on him. So let me pull up Christian Walker and his numbers right now. I know that Walker dealt with injuries towards the second half of the season for a bit, which was unfortunate, but he's been a nice, consistent, solid slugger there for a couple years now in Arizona. He's really defined himself as one of the more underrated first basemen slash DHs in all the National League. Don't bother with Walker. I like how that like unintentionally rhymes. Here's Christian, 33 years of age, is Mr. Walker. And he started well. Oh, imagine him with the Orioles right now where he started his career. That'd be nasty. Walker, this past season, in 130 games, 26 home runs, 72 runs scored, 84 RBIs, a 251 average, a 335 on base percentage, a 468 slug, 119 WRC plus, so around 20% better than the average batter in baseball, and also accounted for 3 WAR. He's coming off of back-to-back seasons in 2022 and 2023, prior to 2024, where he was a 4 WAR player in Arizona, was fantastic in 2023, 33 home runs, 103 RBIs, year prior, 36 home runs, 94 RBIs. Something that I am noticing with Walker to a degree, though, not that he can't bounce back in a bigger sample size should he stay healthy all of 2025, but there has been... Actually, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to say that against him. There really hasn't been slight regression because he played 30 games less this past season versus his previous 2 years. If he played his normal sample size, he would have gone to 30-plus home runs and north of 100 RBI, especially with how good that Arizona offense was. So, yeah, I'm not going to slight him at all. He's been the same exact value of a player for 3 consecutive years, really, since he started to break out with Arizona. So, yeah, if you're looking for a proper backup option, should Alonso fall through, Walker's probably the best shorter-term option, not named Paul Goldschmidt, for example, because Goldie is another unique one if you, say, try to go down the trade route for, oh, wait, or is Goldie a free agent now? Goldie might be a free agent now. Whatever Goldie's status is, he's a man coming off of a down year, obviously, that I'm sure a team will be willing to take a flyer on. I would have my reservations on being the team to take that flyer. Would feel very similar to a JD Martinez type situation in the case of Paul Goldschmidt, but we're actually going to touch on Goldie is a free agent. Yeah, he's 37. Yeah, this is JD Martinez 2.0 right here. But even JD Martinez 2.0, it's insane. Goldie 2 seasons ago had 35 home runs, 115 RBIs, a 317 average, a 404 on base percentage, a 578 slug for just a ridiculous, like 1,000 OPS basically, and a 175 WRC plus and a roughly 7 WAR. 75% better than the average batter in baseball. Then a steep decline in 2023 to 25 home runs, 89 runs scored, 80 RBIs, 11 stolen bags, a 268, 363, 447 clip, down 100 points, over 100 points on the slugging, and down 50 points around there on the WRC plus, down to 122. Then we get to 2024. Goldschmidt, who was god-awful in the first half this season. We all saw that together, guys. He was horrendous. Literally, you could throw him a beach ball and he'd swing right through it. 22 home runs, 70 runs scored, 65 RBIs, 11 stolen bags, 245, 302, 414 clip, 100 WRC plus. Yeah, no thank you. Nothing personal against Goldie. And while I do think that Goldie would thrive in a deeper lineup that the Mets could present, if, say, he's, batting a little bit lower in the order with Soto, Lindor ahead of him, I do think that would make sense. At the same time, though, I don't hate it as a short-term fill-in. I just hate the thought of replacing Alonso. So I think that in general is bothering me more in this discussion than anything else. Let me know how you guys feel about that, especially on the Paul Goldschmidt front. The decline has now officially kicked in. And again, I'd imagine that especially hitting at Citi Field, he would be more like JD Martinez next season. But the question is that okay? Is that enough at the position or no for a Mets team that's trying to do more and is trying to do more than somehow being 2 games shy already that we saw the World Series? It's kind of hard. It is kind of difficult to top that. I'm not going to lie. Let's be completely frank. Like, there's a reality where the Mets don't get to the dance next year. And it's not for a lack of effort, but just on really how hard it is to get there and how much you need to ride momentum there deep into the postseason. But what I do know is that out of these first base options, we will talk about many of them. Sure, the Mets lose out on Alonso, but until then, I'm not going to defer too much for the replacements. Carlos Santana is another one, but again, Santana, I don't even know how he's still balling out at this point in his age. It's pretty bananas. Will bar title of a guru? I disagree. I completely disagree. The man that the Mets hired in Desi has been spoken glowingly of fellow people across Major League Baseball that are heavily involved in pitching, especially analytically on the analytical front. His ability to not only process, not necessarily manipulate, but to process, understand, break down, and articulate pitch shape for arsenals and to fine-tune them and to get the best pitchers adjusting their arsenals and their shape, I think is a very important thing. That's boded unbelievably well for a Yankees team that got the best out of guys like Luke Weaver for this past year, as an example there, going from a starter with Arizona and many other teams to then a reliever that really became a very strong one, a dominant one at times for the Yankees throughout the course of the season, already sliding into that closer role when Clay Holmes was nowhere to be seen because he unfortunately was regressing a decent amount this year, just was not well, doing too hot on those high leverage situations like he did a couple years ago. But that's all there is to know on Goldschmidt. On Carlos Santana, again, a veteran as well, that I would prefer that we didn't have to go down the route of, but isn't the worst option in the world if you had to go for an Alonso replacement. But given the fact that we don't know the future of Alonso right now, and given the fact that we also understand that Alonso is one of these people that does want to be here, he's expressed that plenty. Until we find out where he's going to be going, and if he's part with or not, then we'll talk about further Alonso replacements from there. I don't think we need to beat it any more than that. But I think what we should talk about now, folks, is a bit more on the other targets, because there's one man that we talked about briefly on the channel the past couple of days, and I want to highlight him more because he's a fascinating one when we evaluate trades, and I want you guys to focus on that word there, trade. We're going to talk about trade and trades. We're going to talk about trades a lot this week, and especially including tomorrow's content, so be on the lookout for that. We know that the Mets are going to be involved plenty on the free agent front for a bunch of miscellaneous relievers they never heard of, a bunch of potential options off the bench should they not bring back a Jose Iglesias or a Jesse Winker. But those are two guys I think we could at least see one, if not both, back, God willing. Two guys I would love to see back with the Mets. And certainly on the rotation front, one looking to acquire shorter-term options, not name a Roki Sasaki that the Mets will do everything in their power to try to land. But one man on the trade front that the Mets were actively involved with leading up to the trade deadline, like many other teams, but are actively involved now, is Garrett Crochet. And Crochet is a fascinating one to break down because when you look at his pure stuff, he's one of the nastiest starters and pitchers in general you will come across in Major League Baseball. He gives you 100 mile per hour on the heater. He gives you a cutter that sits low to mid 90s. He just has just ridiculous movement with his pitches there. And then when he gets to the off speed and breaking, it just isn't fair when he throws it in that slider out of nowhere. It just completely throws off those hitters. And Crochet is one of these guys where he's coming off of Tommy John surgery, which had him out the entire year of 2023. We're here in 2024, and he looked absolutely fantastic. 146 innings, the most he's had at the major league level. A roughly 13 K per nine to a 2.03 walks per nine. A 3.58 ERA to a 2.83 expected ERA. He's been absolutely dominant, Crochet, but the big concern is, oh my goodness gracious, his mechanics, he's going to be a big health scare for years going forward. Always on a pitch limit there throughout the course of the season, so that's something to be a red flag about. Well, one thing that we have noticed actually about Crochet's mechanics is that they're simplified, and he gets all of his 6'6" frame or so to really enter his velocity. He's not one of these guys that is reliant on over-exaggerating his arm to the extent where that is why he was as nasty as Tim Lincecum certainly was. Spencer Strider, to a degree, with his 6-foot frame. The list goes on from there. Crochet uses all of his body really well to have smooth mechanics, so coming off of Tommy John surgery, there isn't an overwhelming concern when it comes to the shoulders or anything of that nature, other than the natural injuries that you have to be concerned about with an everyday pitcher. Crochet, if managed properly as a starter, and even if the Mets, they have to defer to a six-man at times for the sake of giving him a little bit extra rest to make sure and ensure that he stays healthy. If there are any concerns there, you do that, because Crochet is without question one of the most dominant pitchers that we have seen in Major League Baseball since he's arrived here. The guy was leading the way for Cy Young for a good stretch in the first half out of the American League this past year, and Crochet is one of these guys I think you give up an arm and a leg for. He's one of those guys where I think if you gave up, say, again, nothing personal, I like Brett Beatty, I always have, I'm still rooting for him, but if you have to give up Brett Beatty and or Ronnie Mauricio and or one of Jet Williams or Drew Gilbert and or one of Luis Angel Cunha and Jesus Baez, those are things you heavily consider for Garrett Crochet. And honestly, I don't think you just consider them, you try to ink them, because as exciting as a lot of the Mets in-house prospects are, this is a guaranteed thing already. And this is something that could impact the Mets and their rotation for the next decade plus, as a dominant southpaw, striking out Ronald Acuna Jr., striking out Bryce Harper, and striking out everyone, their mother there in the National League. Just imagine Garrett Crochet against Shohei Ohtani there in next year's NLCS, how dominant that would be.
What is
when we speak of Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers, they will be heavily involved in the Garrett Crochet market as well, as they absolutely slam dunked their last trade with the White Sox, and a 3-team trade for Michael Kopech there and Eric Fetty going to the effing Cardinals back at the trade deadline, which worked out so brilliant for the Dodgers and not so brilliant for everyone else between the Cardinals and the White Sox. Hopefully Chicago's learned their lesson from trading with the Dodgers one time, and they can defer to trade to the Mets this time. The Mets have everything that the White Sox are looking for MLB-esque ready talent that can impact them right away. They're on the come up of being MLB-type caliber players, if not on the fringe of being MLB-type caliber players and the position player front. That's where, like, someone Garrett Crochet and the Mets farm really match hand in hand. But my question to each and every one of you is, knowing how dominant Garrett Crochet is and knowing how much he would be a lightning rod in this Mets rotation, again, he would do wonders for this Mets team, and I will stand on this until proven otherwise. Do you guys think he would be worthy of the asking price for a man that is not a free agent still for a couple years until the 2027 offseason? What about Walker Buehler? We'll talk about Walker Buehler. Don't you worry. We'll definitely talk about Buehler. Are you guys for or against trading some significant young assets for one Garrett Crochet? It's as simple as that. So on my live viewers and replay viewers, let me know in the comments down below. Really appreciate that. I want to see what the discourse is going to be for someone of Garrett Crochet's caliber. Trust me, I would love Max Fried too, but I'm here to tell you, I will be damn shocked if the Mets land Max Fried. Not shocked like it can't happen, because the Mets have proven how much more valuable of a team they are. The Braves learned it this year too, to an extent. But Fried feels destined to go NL West. I've been very stubborn on Max Fried being a Dodger, a Padre, a Giant, or even, again, a Arizona Diamondback. He's going to be in the NL West, not named the Rockies. I feel so confident in saying that. No Sproat, Williams, or Gilbert. I think that's going to be hard to swing in the case of trying to trade for Garrett Crochet. Again, you have to give to get, guys. You can't expect to give up pennies and get a Cy Young caliber pitcher in return. So to anyone that thinks don't get me wrong, the White Sox are idiotic. There's a reason why they were god-awful last year, MLB's worst team in regular season history. They're beyond stupid. They don't know what analytics are yet. They're still trying to grasp that reality. But the one reality that they have already grasped is that they are bad. They're really bad. And in order to kickstart a rebuild, it's to trade arguably your biggest asset, which is Garrett Crochet, for immediate position player help and need. That is exactly what they're trying to look for right now, and that is what makes the team one of the hotter commodities, because we do have a farm that equally matches a lot of what they're looking for. We're going to get to Roki Sasaki here shortly. Don't you guys worry. We'll actually go from Crochet to then talk about Sasaki, and then from there, we'll talk about Willy Adames, Corbin Burnes so much, and then some more players that you guys would like to break down and to kind of go back and forth on the live chat and my replayers down below. We'll do exactly that. Folks, if you haven't already, to our north of 700 live concurrent viewers here on YouTube, can you guys please make sure to smash a like and subscribe button for your boy? Greatly appreciate it, as we've been breaking down the latest in Mets land. From the Mets' big hire today, landing pitching guru from the New York Yankees. Not that he was fired by the Yanks, but that he willingly left the Yankees organization after losing the World Series to be in the same exact position as assistant pitching coach to Jeremy Hefner and the Mets. If that isn't a sign of things trending upward for the Mets and their public perception, especially in a big market like this with crosstown rivals, I don't know what is. But let's see how you guys feel in the chat about everything we're breaking down. Jordan, my man, how are you? Jordan Simpson, my jingle maker himself. Hope you're doing fantastic, Jordan. Thank you so much for chiming in. You destroyed that like Elgood. I love you so much. Thank you so much for doing that. Trying to cope with the fact that Dodgers whooped them. There isn't one Mets fan that's hanging their head about the Dodgers beating us. Leave it. Holy shit. You have to be really insecure as a Dodgers fan after winning the World Series to go back into a Mets-related chat and to think that we feel down about losing that series for a team that was 11 games below 500 this year. You're not only out of touch with reality, but you don't even know what good things are. My friend, you don't deserve to be a champ. It's got to suck. It's got to suck to still be down the dumps after winning it all, that you got to defer to stuff like that. Holy shit, my friend. Go get some help. Insecurities aren't fun. I recommend therapy. They're not actively a sponsor of the channel, but I would recommend BetterHelp. BetterHelp does a fantastic job for online therapy, especially for very insecure, ill-minded, midget-minded Dodger fans like yourself that, need a grasp of reality and understand that it's okay to appreciate the fact they are now a World Series champion, rightfully so and comfortably so, without being a little priss about it. But again, I understand that's hard. Go to BetterHelp today. Dick Mound is good enough for Team USA. Oh, we love ourselves some Dick Mound. If you know, you know. Trust me, we all do, guys. But that's not who we're talking about today. Mr. Rich Hill, Mets legend, again, former Boston Red Sox, former whoever. He's been on every single team. Pittsburgh Pirate, I mean, go down the list. God. Speaking of going down the list, let's go from now talking about one pitcher to another. We talked everything there on Garrett Crochet, everybody. I want to continue to see your reactions in the chat. Now let's defer to Mr. Roki Sasaki, because even if Roki Sasaki is destined to land with the Dodgers, the Padres, or wherever he might go, not named the Mets, it's very important to know what would be happening if Roki Sasaki hits the bigs as soon as next season. This man is ridiculous in so many different ways. Yoshinobu Yamamoto didn't have a smooth transition to the MLB initially, but it didn't take him long to really get his feet wet and then properly get on a roll. And then when healthy, we saw how dominant Yamamoto was able to be down the stretch and against those Yankees in the World Series for the LA Dodgers. When we look at fellow countrymen now, and this time in Roki Sasaki, we're looking at a special talent. Now, what separates Roki Sasaki from the rest, even Yoshinobu Yamamoto, is that this is a man at only 22 years of age that is expected to be posted as soon as this offseason, there in January, or at some time next offseason. Kevin, I appreciate it. I know we got good Dodger followers in the chat. We do. We built good relationships with plenty throughout the course of the postseason. We had a lot of fun with them. We always did. But getting back in this one on Roki Sasaki, who might be a future Dodger, if he's not going to hopefully be with the New York Mets or something along those lines. This guy is nasty. And when you have 100 mile per hour in the back pocket the way he does, you want the velocity up and down that he had this past season. Sasaki just needs to stay healthy, and he knows that at 22 years of age, if he does get Tommy John the next year or two, again, you still have him for potentially north of the next decade at a dominant level. This guy's just getting started. Now, we see a lot of pitchers really not get into a groove, anything remotely close to the talent that Sasaki is, until they're 30, 31, 32 sometimes. Jacob deGrom was a late bloomer in a lot of ways. This was a man that started his early career sitting low to mid-90s on the fastball. And then as he got into his 30s and then mid-30s is where the velocity unleashed like never before. Unfortunately, his body has not been able to sustain that velocity because that's not an easy thing to do. But when you start out with the velocity so comfortably, the way that Roki Sasaki does, posting a 2.35 ERA across 111 MPB innings this past season in Japan for the Nippon Pro Baseball League, a .2 home run per nine to 2.6 walks per nine, a 10.5 K per nine, a 1.04 WHIP, and a 129 strikeouts across those 111 innings. That's pretty damn good. Sasaki has been dominating since he's arrived at the MPB. As a young man, and he's still getting started. And now that Sasaki's already looking like, his time at the MPB is going to be coming to an end as soon as, him hitting the bigs this offseason, this is someone that if any team, whoever has the luxury of landing him, is going to sign him to a minor league contract because the uniqueness of him being early posted by his club and the MPB. Because of Shohei Ohtani being posted and signed with the LA Angels for not a lot of money in retrospect, when he initially came to the States, the MPB made a rule change from that point on. And what they did differently was that any player going forward could not get early status for basically posting, even though Roki Sasaki is at the point of getting that. Now, what will happen is the team that posts him is going to not get nearly as much of a return as, say, Yoshinobu Yamamoto's club did last offseason, getting $50 million out of a $325 million record-breaking MLB deal for the largest contract in Major League history for a pitcher actively. Things are very different. Sasaki, the most you can give him is like $7 million total on this minor league contract. It all goes in hand with the bonus pool dollars that you have. Now, I've been led to believe that the Mets have around $3 million more than what the Dodgers are working with, but that goes in hand with the Mets not signing what they initially had committed at around $5 million or so to a star prospect shortstop that we're going to talk about closer to January when the international free agent signing period officially begins. If the Mets decommit from that area and allocate their money elsewhere, then Sasaki is of greater reality. Now, I don't know what the status is or how those rules exactly go when you look at international free agent signing periods for these young players. It's unique here in the sense of Roki Sasaki because he's not like what it would be from getting kids from the DR, Puerto Rico, etc., Venezuela, you name it, where these are, 16, 17, 18-year-olds are signing, whereas Sasaki's 22 coming from the MPB. But it's a 45-day status for Sasaki when he's officially posted for that window to begin. That will likely begin in January should they be able to be steadfast and getting it done as soon as humanly possible. And if that does happen, if Roki Sasaki does land with any of these teams on a couple-year... Tingus, I will get to your donation in 1 second, my man. Let me go up in the chat. Hold up. To go answered you from earlier. Tingus says, bring back d'Arnaud. No, thank you. We have we have Torrens and Alvarez who are going to be just fine. And already we heard David Stern speak about that this past week, that will be the tandem for the 2024 season, barring any changes. And I'm in favor of that. Travis d'Arnaud, that ship has sailed with the Mets organization. And that's okay. But to expand further on Roki Sasaki and why this would be such a big get, in 2023, which is just insane to look at, again, in his age 21 season, Roki Sasaki had a 1.78 ERA across 91 innings, a .747 whip. The year prior, at the age of 20 in the MPB, a 2.16 ERA and 129 innings and a .796 whip. It's just unfathomable. He went from a 12K per nine as a 20-year-old to a 13.4K per nine as a 21-year-old to a 10.5, so a slight decrease this past year because he fluctuated with his velocity there at the MPB throughout the course of the year with his health. But holy guacamole, like this is a kid that would do wonders for any team that would have the luxury of signing him. That's why the Mets and David Stearns flew to Japan back in September to potentially acquire his services. And that's why no one should be shocked if the Mets do find themselves landing Roki Sasaki, because this is not for a lack of effort. They're going to do everything in their power to try to sway Roki to say, hey, come be the star here in New York the way that you would be the third, fourth, fifth, sixth star there in LA. You want to make a name for yourself. You want to be the face of an organization, not just the one of many. Come join the New York Mets where you can help become and make that a reality as headlining that rotation with Kodai Senga and then Francisco Lindor. I mean, it's you and Lindor. And if you sign Soto, that's a three-headed monster that would, oh my God. Another thing, guys, and again, I say this in the most nice way possible. The Mets have great Asian descent in Queens. We know this. So, in general, between Kodai Senga here, and I love it so much when I go to Senga starts, and you do see a heavier influx of people of Japanese descent in attendance for his games, which I think is so cool, especially when I see people either from Japan or just Japanese-related Mets fans that are repping his, his MPB jersey during his time there in Japan for a decade. It's great for the culture. It's great for the game. If you bring in Roki Sasaki, you build so much more of that market in an area that's so easy to build such a great market of. I think the Mets could take so much more advantage of said market, again, if they're just able to land and pry away some of these superior Japanese talents and even Korean talents, too, from the KBO when they become like the Jun-Hoo Lees, even though that contract has looked like milk throughout the first year with that injury for the Giants, unfortunately, on what I do believe is an overpay at 120 mil or so over 5 years. It was way too high for a guy where there's questions about his power at the MLB level. No less, I really, really hope that the Mets can at least get a good run here for Roki Sasaki. And even though if they don't land him, this is going to further explain to fellow countrymen of Japan, of fellow players from that area, that the Mets care and that they are going to roll out the red carpet for these guys. They are going to do everything in their power, because that's what the Mets have been actively doing here with Roki Sasaki. So nothing should be overly shocking there. Guys, give me 1 second. I need to do something real quick, and then I'll be right back. Apologies, folks. It just, as I mentioned, if anyone was first chiming in and didn't know, I just had hernia surgery less than a week ago, and the pants that I had on were very uncomfortable, so I just switched into shorts, and we're locked and low. We're ready to go. The ones I had, the waistline was like way too tight, and post surgery, that shit hurts a lot. So had to do a quick switch for you. Per MLB, here are the top 5 teams based on remaining 2024 international bonus pool. Thank you for the breakdown. Dodgers at, let's see, 2.5 million. Orioles at 2.1. I don't believe the Dodgers have as much as that. I needed to double check, however. Yeah, let's see. Yankees at 1.48, Giants at 1.24, and the Red Sox at 990K. And that's assuming that their current commitments, however, for this upcoming international free agent signing period hold true. Apparently so, David. Apparently so. Let's go up the list here, everybody. Okay. Wardy, what did I miss? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. Lord says, Wardy, what I miss? And I read that as Wardy, what a miss. I'm like, what did I miss? Yeah, no, what you missed is a decent breakdown on the Mets' new assistant pitching coach hire that has everything to do with his ability to really process and break down pitch shape, which is very important to know. From there, we talked a bit there on how the Mets have a slight advantage on Soto, not only on the prospect delaying him on the dollars alone, but Steve Cohen's active relationship with one Scott Boras. Then we touched on multiple targets from the Mets from Roki Sasaki, who we just debriefed on, that we're now going to transition into getting a bit more on Willy Adames, on the prospect of signing him. Are you guys in favor or against a potential Willy Adames deal? And then we'll touch a little bit on Corbin Burnes, and if there are any other players, I'll touch on a couple more before we wrap things up, as long as we're not too long-winded. As we've already reached the hour mark, I'm probably going to go another 15 to 20 for you guys, tops, and then we're going to wrap things up from there, just because I'd be lying if I didn't say that I am in a decent amount of uncomfortability at the moment. I didn't know what to expect in my first show here, post-procedure. I know that I'm feeling better each day, so tomorrow will be even easier to do than today, but I tested my limits today to an extent, to say the least. So we're doing good, but we're not going to extend the live show too long just because of the current ailment that I'm dealing with. Let's now get on to talking about Willy Adames, though. Let's talk about Willy. Willie's a fascinating one, guys. He's not just a fascinating one because he likes to have fellow shit talk with one Jesse Winker, in which we're always going to side with Jesse Winker. I will go anywhere for that man in Jesse Winker. I will run through a brick wall for him right away. If he tells me to jump someone, I'll jump someone. And I'm only half joking. Willy Adames is the man that was in Jesse Winker's way in the NL wild card. And Adames was trying to fight him back in the parking lot. Jesse wasn't about it, but that's okay because Jesse had the last laugh in the end, having a massive run, passing the Brewers after a shit show of a run he had in Milwaukee a year or so prior, that he was injury riddled and they just didn't treat him right. He hates Milwaukee, everything about it. Willy Adames, after David Stearns, the Mets' current president of baseball operations, traded for the same Willy Adames back in 2021 from the Tampa Bay Rays for some pitchers, he's been brilliant for the Brewers as a very strong slugging shortstop for them. Solid defender, had a solid amount of errors this year, but still an uber athletic guy. That certainly wouldn't hurt for the Mets if they want to shift to the hot corner. And as recent reports have indicated, and as we've talked about on the platform a lot over the past couple days, the Mets are actively involved in the Willy Adames market. They have already shown plenty early interest, and they supposedly offered him a contract of $160 million over 7 years, which I still don't believe all that much. I think the connection was there. I doubt the Mets offered him 7 years. I find that very hard to believe, even at 22 mil AAV, knowing that that isn't too steep of an AAV. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong for that. We'll find out. But Adames, who again has a good rapport, obviously, with one and David Stearns, would be rekindling that connection and relationship should he land here. Adames, over this past season, 32 home runs, 112 RBIs, 21 stolen bags, at 251, 331, 462 clip for a roughly 5 WAR and roughly a 20% better than the average batter in baseball that we saw this past season. And John Fallon, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. This is a guy that would absolutely be fantastic in the Mets hot corner if, say, Pete Alonso walks and they shift Mark Vientos to first base, or have Mark Vientos get more standalone DH time, maybe rotate him and Alonso at times. And unfortunately, that would probably mean the demise of Jesse Winker, which heartbreaks me to say, but those are the things that you got to do, in my opinion, especially if you're going to land Juan Soto. Like, here's a question for everybody. The Mets' interest in Willy Adames here is real. And the reason why it's real is because even though he's not the best defender, he's an upgrade clearly over Mark Vientos. The Mets know that they have a lot that can get them to where they want to be next year, to hopefully having a deep run and getting all the way to the dance, falling 2 games short this past year. Not for a lack of effort there, obviously. They know that defense hurt them at times. We saw it hurt them. We saw Mark Vientos' defense cost them multiple runs in playoffs. Vientos' home run heroics were awesome, and they superseded all those defensive woes. But they were still an active issue. And after seeing how bad the fundamentals were for the Yankees this past run, further proves why David Stearns is going to do everything in his power to shore up this team defense collectively. So what does that mean? It means going after guys that are more uber athletic that still provide plenty of offensive upside. Willy Adames has a loopy swing. Willy Adames probably just had the best season of his career, or close to, and a walk year hitting the free agent market. I think all those things are true. I also think that Willy Adames at the right price would be brilliant for the Mets as a hot corner option for them, with Mark Vientos shifting to first and or DH, as we mentioned. If you can keep Alonso, that'd be great, but obviously, I don't think there are a lot of fans complaining at the idea of bringing Juan Soto and landing Adames over Pete Alonso, because say you go with Adames for the more uber athletic, versatile player than a standalone player pretty much in Alonso at first base / DH. I can see Stearns going down that route and that mentality because the early reporting has suggested pretty much exactly that. Now, it's not the hometown favorite idea, but correct me if I'm wrong, and Mets fans, let me know where you guys stand this in the chat in the comments down below. Would you be in favor of Willy Adames knowing that we had Juan Soto? Even if it meant the demise of Pete Alonso, would you be in favor of Willy Adames if it meant Juan Soto? Would you be in favor of Willy Adames if it meant just Willy Adames and Juan Soto goes back to the Bronx, or he goes somewhere else and Pete Alonso goes elsewhere? Or Pete Alonso, Mark Vientos, and Willy Adames, which I don't foresee to happen. I don't know why. I could be wrong. I think the Mets just want a little bit more versatility in that DH role, and I don't know how much they'd love the idea. I mean, I could be wrong. Vientos proved a lot this past year, so I think that they wouldn't hate it for him, even if he was playing every day, knowing that would be at DH, it'd be okay for them because of how good his bat is. But which of those combinations feels most fitting to you guys, if any? Or are you just saying, or are you guys just under the wavelength of, listen, I know that we need to upgrade this team defense, but I also know that Pete Alonso is so important to this Mets team, and it would be silly to allow him to walk if you were debating or making a decision between the two. Winker and Adames on the same team, that's something people are buying too much into, Lord Rage. That's playoff shit talk. I assure you that they were really teammates, they would work things out. David Stearns would never put the Mets in a position where Adames and Winker wouldn't be able to figure things out. This is also the same Jesse Winker, for those that are unaware, that was just in attendance at, I believe, Francisco Lindor's daughter's birthday party. The Mendozas and who was it? Jose Iglesias came to Kalina's birthday party, which is very sweet. And see, Jesse Winker was also there hanging out with Lindor and others. Mind you, Jesse wasn't with the team a lot, but him and Lindor do go way back. They grew up together, playing with and against each other. So, again, that isn't overly shocking. But we would all love Jesse back. But David Stearns isn't stupid. One of the things that David Stearns purposely highlights when we've talked about offseason player evaluation when acquiring guys is guys that fit the team. That fit the team, you know, from a personality aspect, from an on-field and off-field product aspect, and everything in between. So they would never put themselves in a circumstance where they think that this would be a rat and raccoon, Lindor McNeil shit show like 2021 to find itself happening yet again. That wouldn't be the case. Adames is a Dodger. If I'm being frank, I don't care if Adames is a Dodger as long as Soto's a Met. Now, if Soto and Adames were a Dodger, I would probably just not watch next season, because what would the point be? Truthfully, at that point, it's like we're just building the Warriors, and it's like, okay, cool. That's it then. You know, like, that's where I'd be at. I'd be beyond pissed. Corbin Burnes. Let's talk about Mr. Corbin Burnes. Because Corbin, the controversial Burnes. Why is Corbin Burnes controversial, you might ask, Wardy? Well, everything about Corbin Burnes initially tells you that this is still an ace caliber starter, which he is. But everything also tells you by his consistent regression of K per 9 year by year the past 3.5 years that Corbin Burnes is going to defer more and more unless in a proper pitching lab like the Mets and what they're building, especially after their hire today with Desi as their assistant pitching coach, cough, just saying, he's not going to thrive. So for Corbin Burnes, who's expected, a 7+ year long-term contract with a new club, where he's not only going to impact them as an ace-caliber starter coming off of a fantastic 2024 campaign with the Baltimore Orioles, potentially his one and only year there in Baltimore, you're getting someone who has openly said plenty how much he wants to help properly impact the youth of the organization. He cares a lot about the farm that is being built. He wants to make sure they enters an organization that's going to be a consistent winner, that has the proper people in place to make that happen. So not just from a prospect standpoint, but from an analytical standpoint, from a pitching lab standpoint, these are things that Burnes heavily cares about. That's where David Stearns, his connection with Milwaukee and Corbin Burnes hand in hand, really helping him blossom as a starter for the first time. And then now seeing everything he's built in New York in a short period of time, that is what should have you excited as a Mets fan. And that is why, while I don't like Corbin Burnes beyond 3-4 years in general, and that goes for any starter out there, not named Roki Sasaki, while I don't like any of those possibilities really, I won't be hanging my head low on it should it happen with Burnes, because I have the utmost confidence in the Mets being able to properly adjust and fine-tune Corbin Burnes' games. Fine-tune his games better than other organizations. That is why I like and really do believe that Corbin Burnes, if the Mets land him, would work out brilliantly in the end. Pairing him with Kodai Senga, pairing him with other key free agents in the market, whether you bring back Sean Manaea and or release Severino, Yusei Kikuchi, who I really, really like, Walker Buehler, who we will touch on briefly after this, who I absolutely love as an option for the Mets. Actually, I think Buehler would be, in a lot of ways, a similarity to Manaea and what Severino were for the Mets this year on a shorter term end. Should the Mets go to a 6-man if it makes sense? I don't think that's the wrong thing at all. Whatever's best for the rotation collectively is fine with me. But Corbin Burnes, as you guys see from his peripherals here in 2024, did fantastic things for the Baltimore Orioles, but he's also one of these guys that we have noticed a steady decline, as I mentioned, on his K per 9. So how do you combat these things when your best put-out pitch is now something that's becoming more and more hittable each and every year? You adjust. You need to fine-tune your arsenal, and you need to separate what was working so well from what can work better going forward. And that is where I do believe what the Mets are building right now sets up Burnes for that success and for that current knowledge within the organization for years to come, far greater than some other teams, not name, obviously, the LA Dodgers, and not name like the Tampa Bay Rays, who are so analytically minded but aren't going to be able to shout the dollars it's going to take for Corbin Burnes. Corbin knows that comfortability really well with the Milwaukee Brewers. Now just imagine that at a bigger market level where you have a much better team in place with more star power and a greater chance to win than ever before, i.e. the New York Metropolitans. So Mets fans, where do you guys stand on the Corbin Burnes front? Are you in favor or are you against him? Because what we know at this point is that the Mets have been looming. They've been involved in the market. It's been more of kind of Jim Bowden saying that the Mets have been, really eyeing the idea of Soto and Burnes, that kind of pairing. Defense Adames too. There hasn't been too much yet out there to suggest that the Mets have been heavily active in Burnes' front. We just expect that for all the reasons that we've heard at this point and all the reasons that we knew heading into this initial offseason. So that's what I have to say on Corbin Burnes there, guys. We've touched on him plenty in the past and we'll continue to do exactly that until he makes a decision this offseason. And folks, I don't know where we are in the like count, but if you guys could help us get a 350 plus likes by the end of the live show, basically just means half you guys smash a like and subscribe button a bit. Also help us get a 30K subs. We're less than 2,000 away. So insane. We're definitely going to try to hit that this offseason. So thank you guys so much for doing exactly that and helping us get there. Mark Feinsand. Oh, Mark Feinsand just dropped an article. These 7 teams are the best fits for Pete Alonso. I mean, yes, good for you, Mark. I don't need to break that down right now. That's just all speculative. No different than when I'm talking on Bleacher Report. And yes, there are many teams that could be good fits for Alonso. We will talk about more, as I just did actually on Bleacher Report a week ago, as I'm at over this past week. Check it out or so if you guys haven't already. We broke down a potential Alonso landing spots outside of just the Mets. Hey, Worry, do you think we would get Burnes or Crochet and Sasaki? Sasaki, I don't see happening. One of Crochet or Burnes, I do see as a possibility, yes. I think the Mets land one of those 3. if I'm being on the optimistic end when evaluating pitching talent. Isaac Ocasio, longtime follower, thank you so much for the donation, my man. Ocasio says, with the $5 holla, Alonso DH Vlad first ain't going to happen, but I know the way you're thinking. Same thing as Alonso shifting to standalone DH. That won't happen here. Vientos third base, Lindor shortstop, Acuna second, Soto right field, Mauricio center. Whoa, you lost me big time at Mauricio center field. Holy shit, no. No. Not a chance in hell Mauricio's playing center field. Nope. He hasn't even started baseball activities yet, let alone playing center field. That's not his position. No chance. Nino in left field, Winker, Tyrone, Iglesias, then six-man Senga, Crochet, Burnes, Manaea, Sevy, Peterson. You're more accurate on the rotation than anything else. But even then, I love you, Isaac. But what I just read felt like I was just reading, MLB The Show 24. Like, that's what it felt like. Because out of those rotation options, too, the Mets will probably land at most 2 of those 4 new acquisitions, just based on market value and based on things that we're not talking about right now. Is Willy Adames realistic? Yeah, he's actually more realistic than he's ever been, crazy enough. I went from talking about him, when we initially heard rumblings through ESPN radio, to then, as multiple days went on, it became more and more of a greater reality. Yeah, the Mets are actively involved in that market for sure. Absolutely. One more guy that I want to talk about, you guys, before we really wrap things up here, is Mr. Walker Buehler. Because Walker Buehler just had himself a damn good run for the Dodgers, Danny. After, coming back from injury this year, not doing too hot in the regular season, Dodgers rotation was absolutely decimated. They defied all odds and won the championship in the end. One thing that's so much about them, and here we have Juan Soto's sexy numbers, because of course we do. Let me actually pull up Buehler's stats over here. His Savant numbers look god-awful. Nothing about his Savant page is sexy at all. But the same could be said to a degree with Sean Manaea last year. The same could be said with Luis Severino big time last year. So I don't give a rat's how bad that Savant page looks, because what I do know is that Walker Buehler became a man possessed in postseason play when the Dodgers need it most. And I know that Walker Buehler, who's going to be signing probably, a mid-level contract, he's going to be looking for something similar to what Severino and Manaea are going to be looking for this offseason. This is right up the David Stearns alley and this pitching lab. Buehler not only being now a reigning World Series champion, but a guy coming off of multiple, again, almost Cy Young caliber seasons with the Dodgers pre his Tommy John surgery. I think he would just be fantastic for this Mets rotation. Between the four-seam fastball that sits 95 to there that you have you have the cutter that's sitting 91, 92. My mistake, not on the cutter. Cutter was 78. You got the slide piece, you got the sinker there at 95. Then you have the changeup at 90, the slide piece at 85. Again, he has like a 6-pitch mix in here, if not 7, of just a complete bag of goodies that the Mets and their pitching lab can certainly work with. Buehler is one of these guys that is not going to come at a premium the way that a lot of these other free agent arms may come at, especially when we look at Burnes, leading the way specifically. And knowing how much of a heavy pursuit the Dodgers are going to have in Roki Sasaki. Listen, could Buehler take a pay cut and stay in LA because of how much he loves in LA? Absolutely. But if he's going to prioritize the bag and what he should be doing next for his career after winning a championship, he should prioritize the bag. That's like the most obvious thing that you do there, coming off of a World Series run, knowing that even with his health status this past season, coming back from Tommy John, he still did such great things towards the end of the season there in the postseason play for this team. So when I look at shorter-term options for the Mets, outside of Sean Manaea and Luis Severino, guys at the tippity-top of my personal wish list, I have Walker Buehler, as well as, to an extent, Yusei Kikuchi when we evaluate free agent options. Yusei as well. It looked really, really good between the Blue Jays and the Houston Rockets. The Houston Astros this past year was really good for them post-trade deadline, heading into postseason play. I would be very much in favor of any of those guys. Wardy, I would trade McNeil, Beatty package to Mariners for Luis Castillo. It's going to take a lot more than that to land Luis Castillo. I assure you that much. You're not going to acquire an ace-caliber starter from Seattle for a washed-up second baseman and a Brett Beatty who has done anything but prove himself at the MLB level. Yeah, no. Especially for a Mariners team, even if the Mets were eating most of that McNeil contract, you would have to add top prospects with that. So you'd have to start there, just kicks. That's what you'd have to do. But everybody, we are going to be wrapping up the live show in just a couple minutes here, in just a minute or two, actually. So before I let you guys go, I do want to give you a debrief on what to expect throughout the week. As long as I'm feeling up for it and feeling okay, I do intend on doing more live shows this week. God willing, at least one, if not 2+ more, before the week's end. I will be coming out with video content. There will be a new big video out tomorrow. It also may change. The video that I might be working on might take me so long that by the time I'm done with it, we find out some breaking news tomorrow, or we find out a key update, like how we found out about the key hire that the Mets made today, that are just unpredictable, that you just don't know until we just find out the notification on our phone, like each offseason day. Anything can happen. So if any like significant news, any new reports come out that I'd like to share with you guys in a further update segment, or just as a standalone video on one specific topic, we will certainly spearhead that and get to that should the Mets show interest in players and stuff. Other than that, I do have already a video in mind to share with you guys tomorrow, and it will more than likely be top 5 related, like we have done with other segments on the platform. So be on the lookout for that, barring changes. Be on the lookout for consistent content every single day throughout the week, as we typically do, between live stream and individual video content. We got you guys covered to an absolute T. Good. They are no longer a sponsor. That's why we haven't been promoting them. However, I still play as well. I'm glad you've been playing Good. That's awesome. Very happy to hear that. Victor, thank you for the kind words too, on the like and subscribe. If you guys enjoyed the content, please make sure to smash it on your way in and on your way out. It's greatly appreciated, everybody. And again, make sure to chime in for all the consistent content that we have here on the platform. This was a fun discussion tonight. When we're back out here, we will talk more on more Mets free agent and trade targets. Next time we talk this week, I think we'll just kind of do more of a bulleted list. We'll go through a lot of guys that we haven't really deep dived too much yet, and the pros and the cons of potentially landing them, along with obviously we find out more on the actual reported front to share with each and every one of you. We will certainly do that. And before I get out of here, Mikey says, Wardy, what's your sources on Soto? I have not heard anything beyond the fact that the Mets are a top dog for Soto services, and that's exactly why I threw $100 down on a plus 150 bet for Soto to land with the Mets per BetUS Sportsbook. Check out BetUS for all your sports betting needs, folks. Thank you all so much for the support. That is a better trade package there for Luis Castillo, for sure, by adding Tidwell and Ramirez, but it still is not nearly enough because that's a bunch of quantity and it's a bunch of junk one. You got to add some quality in there or else you're going to get nothing. Tidwell is the one thing that isn't junk in that mix for the most part, from what everyone else is defined at currently, but I think you still need to add more there to land one Castillo and his contract. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe adding his contract would be enough to, lessen the deal a little bit on the value front, but we'll find out when it comes to Luis Castillo and his uncertain future there in Seattle with the Mariners. Thank you guys for watching.